giving me wind and rain. You're some kind of butterfly. Baby, you give me midnight. You whip up my appetite. Don't leave me here high and dry. Oh, well, I don't wanna jinx it, baby, and twist myself at the spine. Don't wanna overthink it, baby. It's just twist your body and mine. Baby, you give me ice and fire. You're giving me wind and rain. You're some kind of butterfly. Baby, you give me midnight. You whip up my appetite. Don't leave me here high and dry. Oh, but I don't wanna jinx it, baby. Let's not get ahead of my time. Oh, but I don't wanna miss you, baby. So I stand up and speak my mind. Oh. Baby, you give me ice and fire. You're channeling wind and rain. You're some kind of butterfly. Baby, you give me midnight. You whip up my appetite. Don't leave me here high and dry. Baby, you give me ice and fire. You're channeling wind and rain. You're some kind of butterfly. Baby, you give me midnight. You whip up my appetite. Don't leave me here high and dry. Oh, 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 oh,
What is good, everybody? Let me turn this music down. Sorry, I got you guys in a little bit late today. My bad. I was sitting here just scrolling, looking at all of this injury news that is coming in right now. But welcome into another video here brought to you by the League FFB. Today, we are going to be doing some start-sit advice here for Week 7 of the fantasy football season. And really what we're doing, guys, is we're doing the same stuff that we always do. We're going to talk each of the matchups. We're going to talk each of these games. We'll talk players who are injured, players who are not playing, questionable, whatever it may be. And then we're going to give you guys advice when it's all said and done. So hopefully you guys are excited, ready for that. Let me cut the music here. But what we got going on, guys, is really we're just going to go through each of these games. So without wasting any more time, let's hop right into these games. And man, shaky start to the morning, huh? But other than that, guys, let's get into it. So if you guys have any fantasy football questions for your week 7 games, go ahead and hit me in the comment section. I'll answer all of those as they come in. But without wasting any more time, let's talk about our first game here on the docket. And that first game is going to be the Lions and the Ravens. And in this matchup here, guys, we are projected a game total of 43 points here. The Ravens are 3-point favorites in this matchup. And we're expecting a pretty competitive game script here out of both of these teams. Big injury news out of this one is obviously no David Montgomery. David Montgomery is going to be out in this one. So what does that mean for everybody else? Well, everybody else has been kind of banged up as well. Really, when we're looking at these injury reports, right? Jahmyr Gibbs, he's missed the last 2 games with hamstring injuries. And Craig Reynolds, he has popped up as questionable on this injury report over the last week or so. So what we have here really is both of those guys are expected to play. Craig Reynolds expected to play. Jahmyr Gibbs expected to play. I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be a high-end running back too for your fantasy football lineups this week. But outside of him, we're still starting the usual suspects. We're going to start Sam Laporta. We're going to start Amon-Ra St. Brown. We can start and flex Jameson Williams, and then we can play Jared Goff. Now, on the opposite side of the football, we have the Baltimore Ravens, and I see your question in the chat. Good. I will get that right after this Ravens topic. And so for the Ravens, we have Justice Hill, we have Gus Edwards. I really think we can probably stop starting those guys if we don't have to. I don't really want to start either of those guys anymore. We can play Zay Jones, we play Mark Andrews, we play Lamar Jackson. Outside of those, there's not really many other options that I like in this game for the Baltimore Ravens anyways. And so good says Pollard on bye. Should I start Madison or give Jalen Warren the play at RB2? I also have Latavius Murray. In this one, look, I don't love Alexander Madison's matchup this week, but I do like Alexander Madison more than Jalen Warren. And I would play Madison over Latavius Murray as well. So if this is the start sit decisions that you are having to make this week, I'm going to be going with Alexander Madison in this specific question here. So our next game here on the docket, guys, is going to be the Bills at the Patriots. And the Bills and Patriots game is projected to be at 41 points. It's a projected game total of 41 points. The Bills are 7.5-point favorites in this one. We are expecting this game to be in favor of the Buffalo Bills. We're expecting probably a more slower paced game script in the second half where Buffalo is kind of running the football a little bit more. Big news really is that Damian Harris is on IR. It's not really big news because he wasn't super involved in the offense, but that is going to give a slight uptick to James Cook. It's also going to give a slight uptick to Latavius Murray in this matchup. When it comes down to players that you should be starting for the Buffalo Bills in this game, you're obviously starting Josh Allen. You can start James Cook, Stephon Diggs, and then you can probably flex Latavius Murray if you're in a pinch. I wouldn't, but you can if you're in a pinch. Then you can play Dalton Kincaid. You can play Dawson Knox, but both of those guys are so touchdown dependent that if there are other options out there, there's probably some better options at your tight end position. And we can play Gabe Davis. For the Patriots, there's really not a lot of people we're playing. You probably can play Ramondre Stevenson, and you hope that he falls into the end zone and maybe get some passing work. You can probably play Kendrick Bourne. But outside of that, I don't know if there's anybody else you're going to play. Juju Smith-Schuster, he's doubtful in this one. Hunter Henry, he's questionable. If Henry plays, maybe you could play Henry at the tight end position. But again, there's probably better options than Hunter Henry out there at that tight end position. So that is your Bills-Patriots matchup. The next game on the schedule there is going to be the Commanders at the New York Giants. And this game has a projected game total of 38 points. The Commanders are 3-point favorites in this one. We're expecting somewhat of a competitive game. Big news in this matchup is that Daniel Jones is doubtful, likely not playing. It's going to be Tyrod Taylor, most likely. Now, with Daniel Jones out and not playing in this matchup, how are we going to view Tyrod Taylor? Well, for me, I think he's a low-end quarterback too in fantasy football lineups this week. In your super flex leagues, there's maybe a chance that you can play him as a QB2 in your super flex spot, but in your one QB leagues, you're likely staying away from Tyrod Taylor. There's likely plenty of other options that you can play over Tyrod Taylor this week. For the remainder of the Giants roster, I mean, you play Saquon Barkley, you can play Darren Waller, but then really for the wide receivers, we're not playing any of those wide receivers. These wide receivers just haven't been good enough so far. And then let's see, Raul, he says Tua at Philly or Herbert at KC. Which one would you start? Honestly, man, I love both of these options. Both of these guys are top 5 plays for me at the position this week. I think when it comes down to it, I have Tua Tagovailoa as my quarterback 1 on the week. So he's my number 1 quarterback this week. I would be going with Tua against the Eagles. But Herbert and KC just feels like it's fantasy points brewing. Over the last 4 matchups, I think that they've played together, I think they've averaged about 54 total points scored in those games. So it's going to be fireworks no matter which one you pick. My worry with Tua, now this being said, Tua is my number 1 quarterback on the week. My worry with that is that maybe that Philly defense is decent enough, and not that it's going to stop them, but just that it'll slow down that scoring just a tiny bit. But this offense has seemed to be unstoppable, so I think that's just a small, tiny worry that probably shouldn't matter. So Tua is going to be my QB1 on the week. He's my pick for that matchup. Now, as we talk about this Commanders and Browns game, we've talked about or the Commanders and Giants game. We have talked about the Giants side of the football. Let's talk about the Commanders side of the football. You can start Sam Howell. I think you can play him. You can play Terry McLaurin. You can play Brian Robinson. Those are the guys that you can play in this matchup. You can play Logan Thomas. And really outside of that, I'm probably staying away from Jahan Dotson. You can flex Curtis Samuel. And that's really it for the Commanders side of the football. I probably am not going to play Antonio Gibson either if I don't have to. So now we have the Browns and the Colts. And in this one, it is a 41-point game total, projected game total in this one. The Browns are 3-point favorites. Again, we're expecting kind of a competitive game that slightly favors the Cleveland Browns here. And the big news is that Deshaun Watson is going to be back in the lineup. It says that he is likely to play. I just got a sleeper report here not too long ago that said something about Deshaun Watson and Kareem Hunt are both active in today's game against the Colts. So Watson likely to play, Hunt likely to play, obviously Nick Chubb on IR. But what does this mean for everybody else? Well, Jerome Ford is still probably going to be unfazed by Kareem Hunt right now. I think Jerome Ford, even with Hunt in the lineup, is probably a high-end running back too for your fantasy football teams this week. And I think that he's somebody that we should be playing. We can play Amari Cooper as well. We can play Deshaun Watson. Even though Deshaun Watson hasn't been good for fantasy football so far this year, I think we can still play him. And then David Njoku, you can always play him at a tight end position and hope for a touchdown. This Browns offense just hasn't been very good in the passing game so far this year for the most part. Elijah Moore, I think there's better options than Elijah Moore this week that you could play. And then other side of the football, the Indianapolis Colts, Anthony Richardson, he's on IR. So we're going to get the Gardner Minshew show again. I think similar to Tyrod Taylor, Gardner Minshew is going to be a low-end quarterback too for me in fantasy football lineups this week. We can still play Jonathan Taylor. We can still play Zach Moss. And these guys are guys that I'm somewhat timid about because the Browns have been so good against the running back position so far this year. I think that Taylor's probably just a little bit safer than Moss, but we can still play them if we have to. I just think we need to temper the expectations on those guys this week against this Cleveland Browns defense because they've been so good against really every positional group for the most part. But with that being said, you can play Michael Pittman Jr. You can probably play Josh Downs, and that's about it for the Colts. So that's really what we're playing and what we're not playing in that lineup there in the Browns and Colts game. Now, as we move on down, we got the Raiders and the Bears. This game has a projected game total of 38.5 points. There is a 2.5-point favorite for the Raiders in this one. Again, another competitive game. Jimmy Garoppolo is out in this one. He's not going to be playing in this matchup. Justin Fields out in this one, so he's not going to be playing this matchup. So we're going to get a great football game of Brian Hoyer versus what's his name, Tyson Bagent or whatever his name is. So this game's going to be ugly, guys. We don't want to watch this one. And keep in mind, no Roshan Johnson and no Khalil Herbert for the Bears either. So it's going to be Donta Foreman and what's his name? Darrington Evans in this matchup. So yeah, man, it's not looking good. Who can you play? You got to play Devontae Adams. He's a stud for your team. You're going to have to play Devontae Adams. You can probably flex Jacoby Myers. You could probably not flex. You could probably play Michael Mayer. You can play Cole Kmet, play DJ Moore. You can play Donta Foreman as probably a running back 3, maybe a flex option. But there's a lot of stuff in here, man. It's just going to be a low-scoring game. I think it's going to be a bad matchup of poor quarterback play. And then obviously we're playing Josh Jacobs. That's probably the one guy that I like in this matchup is Josh Jacobs because they're going to lean on that run game a little bit more. But yeah, overall, this is a pretty ugly game. This is a pretty nasty matchup. I don't know if we want to talk about this too much more. It's not good vibes on this Sunday for those teams. As we keep going down, we do have the Falcons and the Buccaneers. It is a 37.5-point game total or projected game total in this one. That is the lowest of the week. So this is supposed to be the lowest scoring matchup. The Buccaneers are 2.5-point favorites in this one with a competitive game script really likely following. We don't have any injuries for either of these teams that are fantasy relevant. So we do have a pretty it's a rare matchup, man. It's a rare matchup where we don't have any of the injuries. So for this matchup, we're probably going to be able to play the usual suspects. We're going to play Bijan. We're going to play Drake London. We can play Kyle Pitts. We can play those 3 guys. When it comes down to the Buccaneer side of the football, you can play Rachaad White. I'd be a little timid about Rachaad White just because this matchup does project to be pretty decent against Rachaad. You can play Mike Evans. You can play Chris Godwin. So we're playing all of those guys. If you're in a super flex league, you can probably play Baker Mayfield and Desmond Ridder this week. But I think, again, there's probably better options, but that's only if you're in a super flex league. If you're in a 1-quarterback league, you're not even looking at these guys. So don't worry about them. But overall, it's supposed to be a pretty slow, ugly, nasty game from the Falcons and the Buccaneers. But now that we've got some of the bad games out of the way, let's talk about some of these good games because the rest of the docket is supposed to be pretty good here this week. Starting with this game right now, it's the Cardinals and the Seahawks. The projected game total in this one is 44.5 points. The Seahawks are 9-point favorites in this one with a projected team total of 26.5 points. It's supposed to get out of hand is really what the sports books are projecting right now. When you look at guys that are not playing in this matchup, Kyler Murray is out. He's been activated from IR, but he's not playing. He likely won't play again for a few more weeks. It's probably going to be like week 10, week 11 before he starts playing football again. James Conner, he's on IR, so we're going to get Keontae Ingram and Amari DiMercado in this one. I think Ingram is the back that you want to have of the two, but I think even with him being the starter, I think he's a low-end running back 3. I like Hollywood Brown. They're going to be playing from behind. I like Hollywood Brown a lot in this one. I think he's a top 10 play at the position this week. And then you can play probably as a flex wide receiver if you're in a pinch, just based on all the buys that we're experiencing this week. I think you can play Michael Wilson. And then obviously we can play Trey McBride and Zach Ertz. I would note, though, that it looks like Trey McBride might have taken the starting reps away from Zach Ertz last week. So that's something I'd keep an eye on because it does look a little bit murky there. Now, for the Seahawks, we have Zach Charbonnet, who's going to be doubtful in this one. DK Metcalf, he's going to be a true game time decision. We're still waiting to see what happens with DK in this one. But I would say if DK doesn't play, we should consider Tyler Lockett a low-end wide receiver 1 this week. The matchup is good enough. No DK. The target volume should be there. I think he could be a low-end wide receiver 1 if DK doesn't play. Now, if DK plays, we're considering Tyler Lockett probably a wide receiver 2, low-end wide receiver 2. But another thing that we need to kind of keep an eye on too is, we have a lot of buys. There's a chance that you might need to be playing this guy, and it's Jackson Smith and Jigba. And Jigba had the best game of his career so far last week. If DK doesn't play, I would consider him a wide receiver too. I think you can play him as a wide receiver too, low-end wide receiver too, in your lineups this week. And it's all going to come down to if DK plays or not. I think right now I lean, and keep in mind, this is just my gut feel, just based off of the reports that I've read. My feel is that DK will play, but I just wanted to get that out there for you guys. But one thing that I also want to talk about is Kenneth Walker. I think Kenneth Walker has the ability this week to finish as the running back one on the week. I think this matchup is that good. Obviously, the game script is going to lean into a heavy rushing attack for the Seahawks, which is already a heavy rushing attack anyways. But they're going to lean into that rushing attack as they start to get a lead on these Cardinals. They're going to lean on Kenneth Walker, and Kenneth Walker is probably a good bet for 2 touchdowns this week. I think he's going to get 2 touchdowns here in this one. It's going to be a great game for Kenneth Walker. Now I see we got Scott in here. He says start 3 flex: Javonte, Foreman, Rice, James Cook, Zach Evans. So in this one, I would be going with Javonte, James Cook. James Cook would be my number 1. I'd go James Cook, Javonte, and then I think I'm going to lean Rashee Rice over Dante Foreman. Zach Evans, I don't like Zach Evans this week, man. They said there was a report that just came out a couple hours ago that said Zach Evans is expected to be the backup to both Royce Freeman and Darrell Henderson today. So Zach Evans, I'm not even looking at him at this point. But James Cook, you should be playing James Cook, Javonte, and Rashee Rice most likely. So now that we have that game out of the way, guys, let's go with the Steelers and the Rams game, because we did kind of just talk about the Rams a little bit. Obviously, the big news is Kyren Williams is on IR now. Ronnie Rivers, his backup, is on IR. So we're looking at that mess of Darrell Henderson, Royce Freeman, Zach Evans. I think if you're playing any of those guys, we should all consider them flex running backs, just because we don't know, what that's going to look like. The thing that we do know so far is that Zach Evans is going to be the backup to the other two. And I think that if I were to make a bet on one of these other running backs, I'm going to bet Darrell Henderson. I think Darrell Henderson is the guy who's going to take that backfield over for the next 4 weeks. He's probably going to be their starting running back. He has familiarity in the offense. Sean McVay speaks very highly of him. Overall, I think Darrell Henderson's probably the back that's going to get it. I bet Royce Freeman kind of gets the start today, and he takes some of the first snaps and some of the first drives. And I think by the end of the game, it's looking more of like a 50-60% split, where Darrell Henderson is probably taking majority of the workload there. So we'll see what happens, but that would be my guess. Over on the other side of the football, Pat Freiermuth, he tweaked his hamstring again, man. He's going to be put on IR, so he's not going to be playing in this one. So who are the players that we're playing in this matchup? Who are the players we're not playing in this matchup? Overall, the game total is high enough. The spread's competitive enough that I think we can play pretty much everybody. If you need to, you can flex either of these running backs, Jalen Warren and Najee Harris. I think both of those guys are flex options for your fantasy football teams right now. Deontay Johnson's going to be back in this one. I like Deontay Johnson a lot. I think he's a target monster. He's going to be able to probably have a pretty good day in this one. And then you can play why am I spacing his name? George Pickens. You can play George Pickens in this matchup. For the Rams, I would say that you can play Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, and that's probably it. Like, I'm not playing really many of these other guys if I don't have to. Like I said, those running backs are probably flex options for me. I don't know if I really like Higbee right now, the way that the target volume is going to just Nacua and Cooper Kupp, but both of those guys are going to be good plays for you. You're going to play Matthew Stafford if you have Matthew Stafford, and then I think you can play Kenny Pickett if you need to, because of buys or injuries or whatever. I know we have some injuries at the quarterback position this week and some buys, so you can play Kenny Pickett. But I think he's more of like a quarterback 2, mid-range, high-end quarterback 2 for you this week. So let's keep it moving. We got 4 more games to talk about here. And if you guys are in the chat, go ahead and drop those start-sit questions. Happy to answer those for you here this week. Help you get a win here in week 7. But the next game that we have on the matchups is going to be one of my favorite games. I'm really excited to watch this game. It's going to be the Chargers and the Chiefs, and we have a 48-point game total in this one, a 5.5-point favorite for the Kansas City Chiefs in this matchup. And this is supposed to be a competitive game, man. Other than the Mike Williams injury that we've known about for a couple weeks, him being on IR. We don't have any major injuries that we need to worry about in this matchup. I think, with Mike Williams out, it looks like Josh Palmer is going to be the guy who's getting the work. We all thought it potentially could be Quentin Johnson, and he just hasn't taken it over. He looks like he's going to need a little bit more time to get developed to the NFL level. Josh Palmer looks like the guy that you want to own, and I think this week he's going to be a wide receiver 3. Overall, for this matchup, I think you want to play everyone. I think you really want to play everybody. We're playing Justin Herbert. We're playing Pat Mahomes. Obviously, these are no-brainers. We're going to play Austin Eckler. We can play Isaiah Pacheco at the running back position for both of these teams. I think Pacheco's a top 12 play at the running back position this week. When we go to the wide receiver positions, Keenan Allen, Josh Palmer, and then I would say for the wide receiver position in Kansas City, it's tough to know who to play. I lean as Rashee Rice is the best wide receiver in this wide receiver room. He would be the one guy that I like the most in this lineup. But Tony's looked okay too for the last couple weeks. And then at the tight end position, you're playing Travis Kelce. You can play Gerald Everett. I think you can play Gerald Everett too. So those are the guys we're playing in this matchup. I see we got a couple questions in here. He said, you were just talking about the game. Is Puka worth holding on to? Absolutely. Puka is worth holding on to. I think a lot of people got scared last week. He kind of had a little bit of a down week. I don't expect that to be the norm. These guys, like I said, the target share, they're seeing like 70% of the passing work, Puka and Cooper Kupp. Like these guys are just, Puka's going to be a guy you want to hold on to. And what? At worst, Puka Nacua becomes a wide receiver 2 for your teams. Yeah, that's fine, man. Like I'm definitely okay holding Puka through whatever it may be, but I think Puka is going to be a high-end option for you most weeks. And he dropped a touchdown last week. Like he had a touchdown in his hands. If he has that touchdown and it comes down with it, we're not even thinking about Puka Nacua as like this, should I hold on to him asset. So yes, I would be playing Puka Nacua. I think Puka is definitely worth holding on to. And then we have, should I start a banged up CMC or start Javonte Williams? Well, honestly, the safe advice would be to just play the guy that plays today, but I'm not going to give you the safe advice today. Reports are coming out where they're saying that all signs are pointing to Christian McCaffrey playing on Monday night in Minnesota, even though he's banged up. He has this touchdown record that, he's still trying to get. And I know he might not care about it, but you kind of care about it, right? So I think Chris McCaffrey is going to play. And if Chris McCaffrey is playing, you're putting him in your lineup. I don't want to question that too much and overthink that. So in this specific scenario, I would be playing CMC over Javonte Williams this week. Now, we have 3 more games here on the docket. Keep these start sit questions thrown in there, guys. I'd love to keep answering them for you and helping you out. We have the Packers and the Broncos, a projected game total of 45 points. This is the most competitive game on the weekend, at least projected by sportsbooks. It's at a 1-point favorite for the Packers. So we're really expecting similar team totals. I mean, both of these team totals are at 22.5. Both of these total touchdown numbers are at 2.5. Like we're expecting it to be a very competitive game. So with that being said, this is a matchup where I am going to be playing Javonte Williams. I'm playing Russell Wilson. I'm playing Cortland Sutton. I'm pessimistic about Jerry Jeudy just because he's going to see a lot of Jair Alexander in this matchup. So I am pessimistic about Jerry Jeudy. But other than that, for the Packers, you're going to play Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones is one of my starts of the week. It's going to be a great week for Aaron Jones. You can start Jordan Love. You can start Christian Watson. You can start Romeo Doubs. And that's really who we're playing there in that matchup. You can probably play Luke Musgrave as well. So that's who we're playing. But I think this week in this matchup, the guy you want in the whole matchup is going to be Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones is going to have a phenomenal day for your fantasy football lineups this week. Now, we talked about it a little bit earlier. The next game, this is going to be Sunday Night Football. We got Dolphins at the Eagles, the highest projected game total of the week at 52.5 points. The Eagles are 3-point favorites in this one, so they are projecting that the Miami Dolphins are going to be throwing through the majority of this game, trying to keep up, trying to come back and win this matchup. So what does that mean for your fantasy football teams? Well, the biggest thing for the most part is that for the most part is that Devon Achane is on IR. Jeff Wilson has been activated from IR. So we are expecting Jeff Wilson to kind of take that running back 2 slot. I think we're just going to bump up Raheem Mostert. We keep playing Raheem Mostert as this running back 1 option. I think this week Jeff Wilson can be considered an RB3. And then other than that, we're going to be going with Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. All of these guys are guys you can play. And then Tua Tagovailoa we're playing. Now for the Eagles, we got DeAndre Swift. He's a great start this week. I think he's probably going to be a top 5 play for me this week. Sorry, he threw me off. I got a phone call in the middle of this. It started blasting my headphones. But yeah, we got DeAndre Swift. He's going to be a top 5 play this week, I think. And then we can play Devontae Smith. We can play A.J. Brown. We can play Dallas Goedert. We can play Jalen Hurts. These are all the guys that we're playing. Quez Watkins, I said he was banged up. It doesn't really matter for the most part. A lot of people are going to be interested to see what Julio Jones does. Julio Jones signed to the Eagles, but I'm not really too worried about what Julio's going to do today. So that is what it is. And then last game, it's going to be Monday Night Football, and we kind of talked about it. It's 49ers Vikings. This is a 44-point game total, 6.5-point favorites for the Niners in this one. So questionable Christian McCaffrey, expecting him to play. Deebo Samuel, he's going to be out. And then Justin Jefferson, obviously on IR, he's going to be out. So might have to get a little bit creative in this game. Deebo Samuel being out is going to be beneficial to George Kittle, is going to be beneficial to Brandon Ayuk. I think both of those guys, Ayuk and Kittle, are going to be top 10 plays at their position this week. So we shouldn't be worried about them. They're wide receiver 1s and tight end 1s this week, Ayuk and Kittle. Christian McCaffrey, I think he's playing. If for some crazy reason he doesn't play, again, all the reports are saying he's going to play. So keep that in mind. But obviously, if you're going to hold out on Christian McCaffrey, have a backup planned. Maybe go get you could go get like a wide receiver. Maybe Osborne is on the waiver wire. Maybe you could go get a guy like just find a 49er or a Minnesota Viking. Find one of those guys, put them on the back of your bench, have them ready to go. Make sure CMC is in your flex position. That way, if he doesn't go tomorrow night, you can have somebody to plug in. But I think CMC is going, so let's not worry too much about it. If he doesn't go, though, Elijah Mitchell would be my first guy that I would say would be the first guy up. So Elijah Mitchell is my play there. I think Jordan Addison is a wide receiver 3 this week. KJ Osborne is a flex. TJ Hawkinson, we're playing him as a tight end 1. I don't love the matchup for Alexander Madison, but I think you got to play Alexander Madison. He's probably a low-end running back 2 this week. I just don't like him because I think the game script is going to kind of get him out of this matchup. The 49ers are expected to lead, which means that the Minnesota Vikings are going to have to pass in this game. So it could just kind of game script Madison out of it. But overall, that's what I'm expecting. And I see we got some questions in the chat. Keep throwing them in there, guys. We want to answer all of these questions for you here before the game start this week. The first one I see is, would Julio Jones be a good stash in the future? I just don't think so. And I'm willing to be wrong, but I think, look, he's going to play on an offense that he's competing for targets with A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. I don't think he's going to get more targets than either of those guys. I think that's pretty straightforward. It's name value with Julio Jones at this point. He hasn't looked good over the last couple of years. I think a lot of people are going to be excited to see it. There's a chance he scores touchdowns, but those are unpredictable. I think overall, I would not waste a roster spot on Julio Jones in any league. He's, for the record, I have some dynasty fantasy football leagues where we are 40-man rosters. They're 40 players deep. Julio Jones is on the waivers in those leagues, and he didn't get picked up when he signed with the Eagles. So, like, I think there's very minimal upside with Julio Jones here. I just am not sold on Julio Jones moving forward. Mr. Demas, he says, I got a lot of buys this week. Should I start Keontae Ingram or Michael Mayer at the flex? It's a good question, man. I would say put in the comments section whether or not this is a PPR league, because if it's a PPR league, I kind of lean Michael Mayer, but I think the safer option is Keontae Ingram. Chadwick says, Jonathan Taylor or Tyler Lockett at the flex. I like Tyler Lockett this week, man. I like Tyler Lockett at the flex this week. Matt says, Hoyer or Mac Jones? Mac Jones, man. I think it's bad because when we look at these projected game totals, and maybe I change my mind when I say that. Because I'm looking at these game totals right now, right? And the Raiders is 38.5. They're projected about a team total of 20.5 points. When we look at the Patriots, it's projected game total of 41. They're projected 16.5. So, the game total for the Raiders is a little bit more, but they're also expected to run the football more in their matchup against the Bears. I think I lean Mac Jones, but both of these guys are going to be pretty bad options at the quarterback position this week. Nick says my entire bench is either on bye or hurt. Yeah, man, this week's bye apocalypse is rough. I mean, we got Titans, Bengals, Texans, Panthers, Jets, Cowboys all on bye. And then on Thursday Night Football, obviously players you cannot play are Jaguars, Saints. And then we have a lot of injuries as well. So it's getting to that point of the season, man. It's getting rough out here. So we're starting to get creative with some lineups. Chadwick says, and if no on JT, should I start him over Stevenson or Robinson Jr.? That's a good question, man. Let me look at this because I have Brian Robinson as a top 15 play. Stevenson's a top 18 play. Taylor's a top 20 play. So I would not. I would just go lock it at the flex, and then I'd play Stevenson and Robinson there. And Demas says PPR. So I kind of like the upside of Michael Mayer in this matchup, but I think Ingram is the safer option. So hopefully that can help you out with that answer. I guess look at your projections really. If you're projected to win this week, make sure you go and check if you're projected to win. If you're projected to win, maybe go with the safer option. If you look at the projections and you're projected to lose, maybe go with the higher upside play. And so Gavin, I see him in here. He says, do I try and trade away Kyren? My other RBs are Pollard, Jones, and Ford. I'm 3-3. You could try and trade away Kyren. I mean, we know we're going to wait a couple weeks on Kyren Williams. At 3-3, you kind of need to find some wins. I think when I'm looking at, potential guys that I could trade Kyren Williams for, I don't know if you're going to be able to do it because I had some other questions this week where people were asking me to trade Kyren, and some of the names that I would be looking at, I guess, when looking to move Kyren Williams would be James Cook. Could you maybe get James Cook for Kyren Williams? I don't know. Could you try and get Adam Thielen? Maybe Christian Kirk, Zay Flowers, maybe Terry McLaurin's a possibility. Like those would kind of be guys that I'd be looking at. Maybe a Rashad White, an Alexander Madison. Like these would be names that I would be looking at if I could trade my Kyren Williams. And I think at 3-3, you probably need to find some wins. So you do have a good group of running backs. I mean, Pollard, Jones, and Ford, you're good there. If you can move them and go get somebody else like that, it's probably not a bad idea. And then I see you said my wide receivers are Cup, Chase, Ayuk, Flowers, and I traded really for T. Higgins. It's not, I mean, you don't have a bad team, man. It looks like you waited on Cup. You had to wait on Cup for a while. Aaron Jones obviously has been hurt to start the year, and Chase is, not the start that we've wanted, but I think you have a good team. I think what I would do though is I would try and trade T. Higgins for a different wide receiver. And if I was trying to trade T. Higgins for a different wide receiver right now, you could be going for like a Chris Godwin, a Terry McLaurin, Debo Samuel, Christian Kirk type of player, because I don't want to have two of those guys from the Cincinnati Bengals in Chase and Higgins on my lineup. Mr. Demas says, is Elijah Moore someone worth trading for? I don't know if he's somebody that you could trade for. The reality is his price should be pretty cheap right now. So you could trade for him. You'd hope that the Browns offense gets a little bit better in the passing game. They haven't been good. I have Elijah Moore on some teams. It feels weird with Elijah right now because it's like he's too good that I don't feel like I should drop him on the waiver wire, but I never feel confident enough to throw him in my starting lineup unless I really need him. So it's tough with Elijah Moore right now. I think if you can get him on a discount, throw him on the end of your bench, it's good to have some potential upside. But he hasn't been great this year, and that offense's passing game hasn't been great this year either. So, it's going to be price dependent, but if you can get him cheap, sure. But if they want you to pay a hefty price for him, it's not worth it to me. Moore is going to have a breakout game sooner or later with the targets he's getting. Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Like the passing game hasn't been good, but he's been decent. So it's just a wait and see with Elijah Moore. For me, I'm treating him as a hold on my lineups right now. Like he's just sitting on my bench until he proves something a little bit more. And then Gavin says, I'm planning on flipping T once he gets productive and it reaches his potential. Yeah. So, I mean, that's a good idea. I think that's the best practice that you can have. So, all right, guys. Well, we have a few more minutes in here. We got about 5 to 7 more minutes. So if you have any other questions, any other start sits, injury advice, anything you guys need, trade advice, or you just want to ask any questions on this Sunday morning, go ahead and ask me any of the questions in the chat. Until then, I will give you guys some of my top plays at the positions so far this week. I'll give you top 5 plays at each of the positions. So my favorite 5 quarterbacks this week are going to be Tua Tagovailoa, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, and Geno Smith. I like Geno Smith a lot this week, and I hope it doesn't come back to bite me in the butt, but I like Geno Smith. Some honorable mentions were Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, Brock Purdy. At the running back position this week, I do like Kenneth Walker as my running back 1 this week. I like DeAndre Swift, Josh Jacobs, Austin Eckler, Raheem Mostert. Honorable mentions are Travis Etienne and Alvin Kamara. They were on my rankings earlier, but Bijan Robinson, Isaiah Pacheco, Aaron Jones. And Raul, he says, thank you for all of your advice and tips. Yeah, no problem, man. I appreciate you guys hopping in here every Sunday, checking in, asking the questions. I love helping you guys. So keep it up, man. I love it. And then at the wide receiver position here, we have Tyreek Hill, Cooper Kupp, Stephon Diggs, A.J. Brown, Keenan Allen. Those are the top 5. I have Puka Nacua. We talked about Puka Nacua. I have Puka Nacua as a top 6 play this week. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Devontae Smith, Brandon Ayuk, Hollywood Brown. Nick says, do you think the Lions can beat the Ravens? Been a good year for me because I'm a Lions and a Michigan fan. Yeah, man. I mean, it's been a good year for you, right? Do I think the Lions can beat the Ravens? I do. I do think that they can beat them. I was wrong about the Lions this year, man. And it's probably because I got a little purple bias in the back. But I was wrong about the Lions this year. I think they can beat the Ravens. And Michigan looks great. J.J. McCarthy looks great as well. So, yeah, you've been having a great year. Matt says, do I continue my tank for Caleb Williams or switch up after last game? I mean, if you committed to the tank for Caleb Williams, you just commit to the tank, right? I'm assuming this is Dynasty League. You just commit to it. You keep rocking with it because you don't have to pick Caleb Williams at the end. I still would pick Caleb Williams just because the upside has been there. A small stretch of games, I'm not really too worried about it. But even if you land the 1-on-1, you can still pick Marvin Harrison. You can pick Drake May. You can pick anybody else in your Dynasty leagues. Or you can trade the 1-on-1 to somebody for a bag and go get, a veteran quarterback or something like that. So, yeah, continue the tank. If you've already committed to it, you got to continue. Gavin says, my friend said that he will give me Saquon if I get him Devontae Adams. May try and do a trade with who had Adams because he has no RBs. That's not a bad deal. And Devontae Adams is potentially a trade candidate as we get closer to this trade deadline because I know he's pretty unhappy and he's been vocally unhappy there in Las Vegas as well. And Gavin says his RBs are Akers and Zeke. Yeah, that's rough, man. That is a rough running back room. So, anyways, guys, I'll give you the tight ends, and then we'll get these last couple questions answered. So this is the last call for your questions today, and then I'll get you through my tight ends. We'll answer those questions. We'll get out of here, and we'll go watch some football. But we do have Travis Kelce, my tight end 1, Mark Andrews, Dallas Goedert, Luke Musgrave. I have him as a top 5 play this week. TJ Hawkinson, Evan Engram, Sam Laporta, Darren Waller, George Kittle, Logan Thomas. Those are my top 10 tight ends this week. So really like Luke Musgrave this week in that matchup against Denver. I think it's a good matchup for him. And then see Matt in here. He says Adams to Dallas. Raul says Adams to the Niners. Look, man, he's going to go somewhere, right? At least that's what everybody thinks. I don't know. It's hard when you start trading these studs in the NFL, especially when they're guaranteed a lot of money like that because you have to eat dead caps. But it makes sense for the Raiders to move him, right? Like they're not a great football team. They kind of need to get into a rebuild here soon. It's interesting because they did pay Josh Jacobs a little bit of money. If I'm not mistaken, what was that contract for Josh Jacobs? I want to say that it's a couple years, right? That contract for Josh Jacobs was it's just a 1 year, actually. Yeah, they gave him the 1 year. So Josh Jacobs, he gets that franchise tag that he signed. I don't know, man. It's going to be interesting to see what the Raiders do. They kind of need to start blowing it up. And they are tied to Jimmy Garoppolo, but I feel like they need to kind of go get a rook. It would be nice to see him go get a rookie quarterback and kind of really redo this thing. And honestly, I think Josh McDaniel's got to go, man. He's not I don't think he's a good football coach. He hasn't been a good football coach. And so I think he's got to go. They kind of got a clean house over there in Las Vegas. We'll see what happens. But Matt says it would hurt if he went to the Niners. And then he says Adams to New York Jets with Rodgers and Wilson. Hey, that's a possibility too, but I feel like that's more of a 2024 move there, because I know Rodgers says he thinks he can come back and play in November. I'll believe it when I see it, man. I'll believe it when I see it. But anyways, guys, that was our Sunday morning live start sit advice for week 7. Hopefully, we gave you guys some actionable advice that you guys could put into your fantasy lineups this week, give you some help. Make sure that you guys are winning your weeks this week, because it's getting closer and closer to that fantasy playoffs, guys. We got to make those playoffs. We got to win those championships. We got to get these trophies. And that's what we're here to do for you this week. And we got one more final question thrown in here. It says Houston or Carolina. I'm expecting this is a defense question. Is this a defense question, Gavin, or is this just a who do I think is going to win who do I think is going to win? Or what? This might be an Adams question, huh? Houston or Carolina? I think that's to Devontae Adams. I think that's what it is. Raul says, have a good weekend. But yeah, man, let's win these championships. Let's have a good weekend, man. And if you guys do feel like I helped you out today, go ahead and hit that like button down below. That's the best free way to show our channel some support. So hit that like button if you can for us. If you're not subscribed, hit the subscribe button. We'll be here every week. All videos out every day, like a whole bunch of stuff. So go do that stuff. And if you guys want to talk fantasy football like this in the chat with me all day, every day, we have a free Discord to join. It's going to be linked in the description. It's free to join. You just log into Discord. You can ask me any type of fantasy football question. We talk fantasy football all day long. So make sure you do those things for us today, guys. And other than that, that's all I have for you guys today. So I will see you on the next one. Peace out.